The silence of the Russian night was shattered once again by fire, by explosions, and by the collapse of yet another critical piece of Vladimir Putin's war machine, the Kubishk Samara oil refinery, one of the most vital pillars of Russia's energy infrastructure, has been struck and completely disabled. This was no ordinary facility. It was a centerpiece of Russia's fuel production, and now it lies in ruins, adding to the long list of catastrophes Moscow cannot stop. With this one strike, Russia has now lost over 21% of its refining capacity, plunging the country into the worst fuel crisis since the fall of the Soviet Union. But this is not the end of the story. It's only the beginning. Ukraine's new missile technology is on the horizon. Corruption scandals are being quietly investigated behind the scenes. Magyar's forces have once again struck deep into Russian territory. Putin's army is desperately trying to bribe new soldiers with promises of millionaire-level wages, and the Kremlin is trapped in a cycle of delusion, thinking peace is near while reality shows an endless war. This is not just a battlefield update, this is a glimpse into the unraveling of an empire. The destruction of the Kubishk Samara refinery is not just another kaboom moment. The refinery was so strategically vital that its loss single-handedly erased over a fifth of Russia's refining power. For a nation so heavily dependent on oil exports to finance its war and keep its economy alive, this blow is nothing short of catastrophic. To put it into perspective, before this latest strike, Russia had already lost around 17% of its refining ability from earlier Ukrainian attacks. Now, with another 4% gone, the Kremlin finds itself sinking into an energy crisis it cannot quickly solve. And here lies the paradox. Russia calls itself an independent power, but in truth, its survival has always depended on exploiting others. Other nations celebrate independence from Moscow, not the other way around, and now its so-called independence is being tested as Ukraine continues to strip away its economic lifelines. But how is Ukraine able to achieve such deep and precise strikes? Enter the Flamingo missile, a weapon that could become a defining factor in this war. Although shrouded in controversy, the missile works, and it works effectively. There are reports that Ukraine may have already used it in combat, though the lack of visual evidence leaves the claim unconfirmed. What is clear, however, is that the missile is operational and could soon appear in large numbers. A surprising detail emerged from research conducted by The Economist. 90% of the Flamingo's components are made in Ukraine. That in itself is a message. Despite war, bombardment, and sabotage, Ukraine is not only defending but innovating. The engine powering the Flamingo is the AI-25, an older model found in aircraft like the L-39 Albatross and Yak-40. Though it consumes fuel at a high rate, the missile compensates with large fuel tanks. And thanks to the Ukrainian company Motorsich, these engines can still be produced today. However, the success of this missile has attracted scrutiny. Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau reportedly launched an investigation into the missile's manufacturer, examining whether the company disclosed its purchases accurately, whether the prices were inflated, and whether the reported numbers of produced missiles matched reality. The company, absorbing nearly one-third of Ukraine's entire military budget for drones and rocket technology, is now under the microscope. Officially, the Bureau denies involvement, while journalists insist an inquiry is underway. The truth? Likely hidden behind closed doors for now. But here's the important takeaway. Even with controversy, the Flamingo missile and Ukraine's FPV drones are absolutely essential to survival. While Russia boasts of producing 3,000 to 5,000 Shahed drones per month, Ukraine's production cannot yet compete at that scale. That's why secrecy matters. Corruption must be rooted out silently without disrupting the war effort. As devastating as the refinery attack was, Ukraine was not done. Ukrainian Commander Magyar confirmed that his forces struck yet another critical Russian oil facility, this time the Nadupovich dispatch station in the Bryansk region. This wasn't just a symbolic strike, it was a direct hit against Russia's military supply lines. The dispatch station served as both a fuel hub and a pumping station for Russian forces operating near the Ukrainian border. By targeting this, Ukraine didn't just damage infrastructure. It disrupted Russia's ability to move fuel where it is most needed for its war machine. To make matters worse for Moscow, reports suggest that not only was the pumping station damaged, but parts of the Druzhba pipeline, a vital artery carrying Russian oil, may also have been hit. This pipeline is a lifeline that stretches into Europe, and any disruption is both a military and economic disaster for the Kremlin. The message could not be clearer. Russia's supposed energy dominance is crumbling, one explosion at a time, but energy losses are not Putin's only nightmare. His military is bleeding manpower at an unsustainable rate, forcing Moscow into desperate measures. In a recent meeting of Russian military officials, Defense Minister Shoigu announced plans to increase the number of contract soldiers. But the way they are attempting it reveals the depth of Russia's desperation. Russian propaganda now advertises army contracts with flashy promises. Sign up before it's too late, the peace agreement is coming soon. Recruiters claim that by joining, soldiers can earn up to 5.2 million rubles in just 1 year, the equivalent of around $60,000. For many impoverished Russians, this is a fortune, and that is precisely the point. Dictators thrive on keeping their people poor, because then military service becomes the only escape from poverty. But the reality is brutal. These promises are a trap. The new recruits are not being sent to safe positions. They are being used as expendable meat in Russia's endless human wave assaults. The advertisements may claim survival and prosperity. The battlefield offers only suffering and death. Meanwhile, in the political arena, the chaos continues. The head of Ukraine's presidential office, Andriy Yermak, recently met with U.S. advisor Robert O'Brien Vitkov, who reportedly pushed Ukraine to consider concessions in Donbass, but the details reveal staggering incompetence. Vitkov seems to have misunderstood Russia's proposal entirely, thinking Moscow was offering a territory swap when in reality, Putin's demand was nothing less than Ukraine's surrender. This confusion mirrors Donald Trump's earlier rhetoric about swapping territories to solve the war. But as reality set in, even Trump stopped using that phrase. Instead, he finds himself cornered in every press conference, peppered with questions. Where is your 24-hour peace plan? Where are the sanctions you promised? What happened to your timeline for ending the war? The truth is, there is no realistic peace deal on the table. Russia still demands the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine, conditions that are completely unacceptable and amount to Ukraine ceasing to exist as an independent state. Trump may be tired of the Ukraine issue, but the Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines, enduring bombardment day and night, are far more tired of the war itself. And they know the reality: Russia will not stop unless it is forced to stop. Despite whispers of ceasefires, despite talks about possible meetings between Zelensky and Putin, despite speculation of Chinese peacekeepers being deployed along the front, the reality is harsh. This war is nowhere near over. Chancellor Merz of Germany admitted that the conflict may drag on for many more months. In truth, it could last years. Russia is not stepping back. On the contrary, it is amassing more troops, launching more attacks, and intensifying its pressure. Even as world leaders debate solutions, Russia continues its campaign of terror, missile strikes, drone attacks, and attempts to break the will of Ukrainian society. But it has failed to capture Kyiv, failed to subdue Ukraine, and failed to achieve any of its strategic goals. As President Zelensky himself declared, it is physically impossible for Russia to take full control of Ukraine. At the same time, Ukraine cannot yet liberate all its occupied lands due to limited resources. The battlefield is locked in a grinding stalemate, but one where Ukraine keeps striking deeper into Russia, while Russia keeps throwing more lives into the fire.